All right, y'all. All right, y'all. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Appreciate you holding on and not letting it get to you. Give me some grace. God bless. Man, I mean, they must have known I was coming out today, coming after some of them. So they just won't let me. Uh, they won't let me ride it out. But that's all right. I got some news for them. We're doing something else. We're covering it on all grounds. Um, in the name of Jesus. That's what we're talking about today. It can get controversial in the name of Jesus because of how people approach using the name of Jesus. Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that? Because in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus throws out a warning. He throws it out there, and I think people today just read over it, bypass it, maybe don't even trip off it. But Jesus says it like this: beware of false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. They want to eat your stuff up. They want to go wild and crazy within your congregation, do the unpredictable, which we really can't say is unpredictable when we know Jesus warned us about it. It wasn't unpredictable. We knew it was bound to be coming, but here we are. God bless. And so jump in this thing. Look at this. There's been conspiracy from within biblical times to this time now. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? The conspiracy within biblical time about the name of Jesus. You know, they were starting out early in Acts. They were starting out early in Acts. And I thought that was strange, right? I thought that was strange that when they were taken into, let's not say prison, let's say they were held up for a minute, right? They were detained by the religious authorities, right? I thought that it was strange when they were detained by the religious authorities in Acts 4 and 5, right? And they were disgusted with them, and they listened to the words of Gamaliel. And it says in Acts 5, chapter 4, in Acts chapter 5, verse 40, the Sanhedrin Council does this upon releasing these young men back into society. I'm in Acts. I'm in Acts chapter 5, verse 40. Right? Acts. You just gotta spell Acts right so people can see it. Hey, y'all. Time has changed. Right? That's what they said to these guys. Young ministers, newly formed congregation, exhibiting faith while still maintaining a connection to the temple, because that's where the miracle occurred, in front of the temple. Because Peter and John had gone together at the hour of prayer to the temple to pray. And that's where they ran into the man begging outside the gate, the beautiful gate, and silver and gold I do not have. That's when they hit him up. Boom. So that's the background. So in the midst of this, the religious leaders and elders like Gamaliel have met, and when they've taken Gamaliel's advice about watch out, you might find yourself not fighting mere men, but fighting with God. If this thing is of God, watch out. And here it goes. When they had called in the apostles, they beat them, charged them not to speak in the name of Jesus, and let them go. Come on, y'all. Now, the side of me that says, we've got a case here, is about them getting beaten. But the side of me that says we've got a real problem with who we're facing and standing up against comes in the part when they said, do not speak in that name. Don't speak in that name. Don't come up in here. Come on. Do not speak in that name. Right? That's where the problem comes in. And the problem comes in real quick when we look at it. That's the ESV. The NIV says not to speak in that name. The New King James says that they should not speak in that name. The New American Standard says they should not speak in that name. Right? The Contemporary English Version says that they should not speak in that name, in the name of Jesus. Good Lord. Don't do it. Shut that down. Stop talking about him. Stop making references to him. Well, why? Why should we stop making references to him? Why should we stop making references to the one and only name that is above all names, the name of Jesus? Why should we stop all of a sudden because of what you got going on? Why? Well, what we're dealing with is it was threatening to what was the status quo. Remember, this group had worked hard to settle things down after Jesus had died and arisen. They had to put out intel that said the disciples had stolen Jesus's body. They had to put out counter information to get people to not believe in his deity, not believe that he could defy the grave. Maybe he pulled that off, some magic trick with Lazarus, but he didn't do it with his own body. The disciples did that. They paid folks to do that. Well, what happened with Judas the other day? Was that something we need to have a church meeting about? No. That man turned Jesus into the authorities, but he did it under his own volition. And when he went to bring the money, we told him we couldn't accept that money because that money was blood money. It had been used to kill a man. You see what I'm saying? And so to bring forth this ministry of preaching Jesus, would disrupt everything they had worked on since their plot to destroy Jesus. That there were thousands of people who already believed was bad enough, more or less, however many believe now that they had just preached in front of the temple and had a man walking around healed in the name of Jesus. And so beware of these workers of evil who want to show up and do their thing and talk about what good they can do in the name of Jesus. Beware of the things that can happen and occur when we start promoting our actions with the label of Jesus attached, or Christian, or by faith, or it was the Spirit that led me to doing this, right? When religions are disguised, it's dangerous. When religions are disguised for evil, it's dangerous. And when we start talking about people being false prophets, there is this that we get from Paul in Acts 20, one of the big departures of a believer in the books. Acts 20, verses 29 through 30. Paul says it like this. I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. They'll rip this thing apart. Even from your own number, men will rise up and distort the truth to draw away disciples after them. Just for a few followers, people are going to sell their souls. Just for a few minutes of fame, people are going to lose their minds. They're going to drift from the faith. They're going to go astray. And part of Paul's reckoning was, I don't even know if I'm the thing keeping it together right now. We have to be careful that how many references to wolves and dogs do we need to have before we realize that something is amiss and wrong with the congregation or the group or the ministry that God is warning us, look, don't get too comfy. Don't get too comfy. Listen, right when you think you've got it settled, excuse me, someone else comes in and says, no, what we really need to be doing is knocking this out over here. Right? When we start talking about the world, we've gone out into the world and created an image of Christianity. And when I say we, I'm talking about overall in the spectrum of Christianity. And that means we, as in us throughout history as Christians. Check this out. We've got to test the spirit, right? We've got to test the spirit. Says don't believe every spirit. First John 4 and 1. 1 John 4 and 1 says we've got to test this thing to make sure that what we're seeing, what we're experiencing is also of the Spirit. Tested by the Spirit to see if it's of the Spirit, because then we'll understand the false things can't withstand in the Spirit. Come on, y'all. We're talking about this. We're talking about this. And the false things begin to fall off because they're, say it, false. Remember, you can't use religion to disguise evil. The wolves in sheep clothing remain as wolves until they're uncovered. They are what they are until they're uncovered. They're just hiding in sheep's clothing. Someone may not recognize them initially, but then it'll be kind of like little Red Riding Hood. Oh, Grandma, what large teeth you have. They look like fangs. Come on. The better with to eat you, my dear. This is something that is dangerous. Dangerous. And if we're not discerning enough, we're not going to recognize it. If we're not discerning enough when religion is is covering up evil doings of folks, we're going to miss it. We're going to be blindsided. Think about how religion was used to acquire many of these lands that were explored in the name of bringing folks to the faith. We said it was about going to the land and changing lives. And we went to the land, changed lives, and put folks into labor for the sake of our ventures. We changed things for the locals. Now, I'm just a student of sociology and history, and I'm at the feet of the masters when it comes to this. But I've often had the question, how do you get to come to some place that other people already occupy and begin to change the names of the places and the people and, good Lord, and lay claim to the property? Last I checked, it was Valley of the Kings. It was a different name, but the British called it Antiquity. Last I checked, a piece of North Africa that was home of the pharaohs and the greatest armies of the world at one point in time was part of Africa. But then when I hear it broadcast on the news, it appears that part of North Africa, which the Nile runs through, is considered the Middle East. So I'm just trying to make sense of how some of this is done. I'm trying to make sense of how, I live in California, how missions have been established in the name of the Lord for the venture of the church and going along with the conquistadors, but then somehow these missions were built, but every mission has a business attached to it, whether it be cattle, apples, and strawberries, grapes from the vineyards, creating wine and other trappings. Every mission has a business that could support or even sustain much of what that church might need. But here we go. All this is done in the name of the Lord. Holy wars and crusades going across the lands to let someone else know that this is land sacred in the name of Christ, and bless us. Bless us. Holy war. These are controversial conquests that are done in the name of Christ. And if we're not aware of the power of his name, then we won't recognize when these powerless efforts diffuse and fall apart. We don't recognize that these were just from the hearts of men, that these were just what they thought they should do. Nothing new, nothing spectacular, just something that it'll keep us from having to deal with the righteous and the remnant and those who seek to God, worship God in truth. Will it? How long will we remain silent? How long will the prophet continue to stand up and say, choose you this day? How long will we keep on looking and standing by and not saying much of anything while people have used the name of Jesus to be destructive? And come on, every pro-lifer isn't just protesting in silence. We got to think about this. We've got to think about this. If we're being destructive, if we're doing evil, if we're creating controversy, if we're destroying property, threatening lives in order to be pro-life, we're on the wrong side of it. If we want people to understand the beauty of life, let's pay for more sonograms and ultrasounds that show that baby and the image of that baby, his feet and hands taking shape and form, his head and body taking shape and form in the womb. Let's not pay for bombs or bullets. Let's pay with what convinces and convicts, not with what kills. I'm saying it because abortion clinics exist doesn't mean that we need to knock them out. I'm going to say something next week about this same stuff that is going to be socially challenging, because there's a thing that we want to say that We want to say that a lot of these folks who have been our past, let's say, heroes. Some people have done some things to help us in the past. Well, yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Some of the folks that have done stuff to help us as a society in the past, and now when we look back, that practices weren't so much on the level. Help us, Jesus. And so when we do this in the name of Jesus, when we do this organized as Christians, what does that say about other Christians? You mean to tell me you don't think that people who are not Christian, that they don't lump us all up in the same group and say, well, look at them Christians over there. Look at them so-called conservatives over there. God bless them. Yeah, God bless us. And let's take this to another level next week. Let's take this to another place next week. Let's talk about where we are and how we're going to continue to grow. Let's talk about how we deal with more than just these wolves in sheep clothing, but how we deal with ourselves day by day and what we need to do and how we need to do it. God be with you. God bless. I hope everything goes up a notch for you this week. Goes into one place all day, every day, and continue to be strengthened in the name of the Lord. I love you. Peace.